She wasn't supposed to survive. The scream didn't sound human. Eli Vance froze mid-step, the dense alien foliage brushing his shoulders. The sound had cut through the jungle's ever-present hum of chirps, crackles, and bioluminescent rustlings like a blade. He pulled off his ear shield and held his breath. There it was again, high-pitched, ragged, and desperate. He wasn't supposed to be out this far. The research zone was already beyond the perimeter, and this part of Zerboss III's jungle was marked as unmapped biological hazard. But curiosity, paired with the vanishing heat signatures from his surveillance drone, had dragged him here. The scream rose again. It was coming from just over the ridge. Clutching his plasma machete, Eli pushed through the thick vine curtains and stepped into a clearing that looked like something from a nightmare. At its center stood a colossal plant, towering at least 4 meters tall. Its thick veined stalks pulsed like arteries. Petals as wide as solar panels shivered and twitched, each lined with barbs dripping with a glistening amber slime, and inside its open maw, oh God, a girl, or something that looked like one. She was halfway consumed, her torso and arms visible, the rest swallowed by the writhing maw of the plant. Her skin was faintly glowing with a translucent teal hue, her hair like strands of silver grass, tangled and wet with sap. Her eyes, if open, were hidden beneath a glaze of filmy resin. Eli didn't think. He ran. The plant sensed him. Its petals shifted, curling inward, and the barbs twitched with sudden interest. One whip of a vine lashed at him. He ducked and rolled to the side, slicing at the tendril with his machete. The blade hissed as it bit through the fibrous tissue. Eli reached the base of the stalk and grabbed hold of the girl's slippery arms. "Come on, stay with me." The plant resisted. Its mouth clamped harder. He felt her ribcage sink deeper. With a cry, Eli jammed the machete between the stalks and twisted it. The plant shrieked, audibly. It vibrated in a pitch that made his teeth hurt, and then it let go. The girl fell limp into his arms, covered in glowing slime, her breath shallow, her eyes still closed. He could feel her chest rising and falling, barely. Without thinking, Eli hoisted her over his shoulder and staggered away from the beast, slashing at vines as they tried to pull him back. The jungle watched. He didn't know how, but he could feel it hours later. Research Outpost Gamma. She lay on the infirmary table, wrapped in a thermal blanket. Eli sat nearby, wiping sap from his forearms, his heart still hammering. The outpost was small, meant for one researcher and the occasional visitor. Just a few modular walls, a lab bay, and the AI core that hadn't worked in months. He checked her vitals again. Her temperature was climbing, too fast. Her skin had shifted from teal to a pale moonstone hue, and then she opened her eyes. They were completely white. No pupils, no irises. Eli stepped back instinctively, his hand hovering near the emergency injector. She blinked. Then she spoke, her voice raspy and hollow. "You shouldn't have touched me," he froze. I pulled you out. You were dying." "You don't understand," she said, slowly sitting up despite her trembling limbs. "I wasn't dying. I was being contained." Eli frowned. "Contained by a flesh-eating plant? That's your idea of safety?" "It's not a plant." She winced and placed a hand over her chest. "It's a mind, a living system, a judge." He didn't like the way she said that word. Judge. "What's your name?" he asked more gently now. She hesitated. "Lyra." "Well, Lyra, I'm Eli. Welcome back to the land of the living." "I was never dead," she said flatly. "Just dormant." "Okay," Eli muttered, grabbing a scanner. "Let's check for toxins." But the scanner sparked and died when it neared her skin. Lyra looked him in the eyes. "It won't read me. You're not equipped." Eli narrowed his gaze. "You're not part of the expedition team, not a colonist, not listed in any registry." "I've seen. So who are you, really?" "I'm what your people buried," she said simply. Eli stared. "What does that mean?" She didn't answer. She simply stood, legs wobbling, and looked toward the door. "You've touched the root," she whispered. Before he could ask what she meant, the lights in the outpost flickered. Later, that night, Ellie couldn't sleep. The wind outside had picked up, but it wasn't just that. Something felt off. The jungle sounds had quieted, too quiet, as if every creature had decided to hold its breath. He stood by the reinforced window, watching the tree line sway. In the dark, it looked less like plants and more like motion. Behind him, Lyra sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the lab's dead AI core. "I told you," she said softly. "The system is aware again. It knows you disrupted the trial." "You mean the plant?" "I mean the root mind," she corrected. "That thing in the clearing? It was just a node. A sentry. A sentry that tried to eat you." Lyra shook her head. "It wasn't trying to consume. It was merging to erase me. Because I didn't comply." Eli turned toward her. "Comply with what?" "Our people are symbiotes. We bond with the network to share thought, purpose. But I resisted full union. I like my mind the way it was." Eli rubbed his eyes. "So you were sentenced to be absorbed," she nodded, "for refusing integration, for choosing self. And now you're free. I saved you." "No," she said, voice turning sharp. "You woke the network. The root mind now knows that an outside species interfered. That's why it's growing again." Eli stiffened. "Growing?" Lyra rose and walked to the window, placing her hand gently on the pane. "You'll see." A few hours before dawn, Eli awoke to the sound of metal scraping. He ran to the lab entrance and froze. The automated door had been forced open from the outside. Vines, thin, hair-like creepers, were slipping through the cracks, coiling across the floor like curious fingers. He grabbed his machete and hacked them away. Lyra was already awake. "It found you," she whispered. "What is this thing?" "It's not just alive," she said. "It's ancient. Your colony wasn't built on a jungle. It was built on its mind." The power flickered again. Eli checked the sensors. Drone 3's feed was active and moving. But he hadn't deployed it. He tapped into the live camera. What he saw made his blood run cold. The jungle clearing appeared on screen. Drone 3 floated silently above it. But at the edge of the frame, he saw himself, standing, staring into the canopy, unmoving, but he was here, inside the lab. "That's impossible." Lyra looked over his shoulder. "It's not you. It's the root mind's echo of you. It's trying to learn." The drone's feed cut to static, and then, faintly on the wind, they heard a whisper, 2 words, spoken not with a mouth, but through the very leaves of the jungle. "Come back. The roots know you're here." Eli sealed the lab doors, heart thumping. In his chest, "Motion sensors are picking up something," he muttered, flipping through his failing control panel. "There's movement on all quadrants, north, east, even beneath us." Lyra said nothing. She stood in front of the window, her silver hair faintly luminescent in the dark. The forest beyond the glass wasn't swaying with wind anymore. It was shifting in a slow, synchronized rhythm, like lungs expanding, alive, breathing. "You said I woke it up," Eli said. "So tell me how to shut it back down." "You can't," she replied quietly. Eli looked over. "Then why the hell did I save you?" Lyra turned, her glowing white eyes locking with his. "Because you still believe saving something means stopping its pain. But some pain isn't meant to be stopped. Some is the price of survival." Eli grit his teeth. "That doesn't make sense." "It will," she whispered. Earlier. That morning, Eli spent the next few hours manually checking every system. The outpost had partial power. Life support was functional for now, but the satellite uplink was down, and backup batteries were mysteriously draining faster than usual. Something was interfering. EMP pulses? He guessed. "No," Lyra said. "Something subtler. The root mind doesn't destroy with force. It integrates. It learns your tools, then disassembles them." "Why?" because that's what it does with everything. Eli tapped into the drone logs, scrubbing back several hours before the strange clone of himself appeared in the forest. Most of the footage was corrupted, but one section showed someone, moving through the trees. Not him, not Lyra. It looked like a colony worker, wearing an old Union Corps uniform, bloodied and torn. "That's not possible," Eli muttered. "This place was marked abandoned." Lyra leaned in closer. "They weren't evacuated. They were absorbed." Eli paused the footage. The figure on screen looked up. Its face was partly human, but the skin around the eyes was bark-like, veined with green. The mouth didn't move, but vines around its neck pulsed with each word. "Find the interface." Then the feed cut out. The jungle starts to change. At sunrise, the outer walls of the outpost were surrounded by a creeping green mass. The flora had grown overnight, roots pushing up through the compacted soil like fingers clawing their way out of the earth. Eli climbed the perimeter ladder and stared into the jungle. What had once been wild and chaotic now looked deliberate. The trees stood like soldiers, the vines stretched from trunk to trunk like nerves. The clearing he'd first found Lyra in was now covered in mossy growth, like the jungle wanted to hide its mouth. "I've seen this before," Lyra said, appearing beside him. "On my homeworld before it was consumed. The root mind doesn't spread like fire. It spreads like memory. It remembers what it was and rebuilds it." "You said it's not just a plant," Eli said, watching the vegetation slither an inch closer every minute. "So what is it?" Lyra looked skyward. "It was once a library." Eli blinked. "What?" "A repository of knowledge. Ancient. Before my kind split from it. Before your kind even discovered space. But over time, its desire to preserve turned into a need to absorb, to catalog minds, feelings, languages. It stopped asking permission." Eli frowned. "So what does it want?" "With me?" Lyra hesitated. "It saw you choose a life, mine. That makes you curious to it." The first message that afternoon, Eli's comm tablet, long out of service, suddenly lit up. A single message blinked across the cracked screen. "Root mind identifies Eli Vance, temporary carrier node." "What the hell does that mean?" Eli asked aloud. Lyra stared at the message. "It's chosen you. You touched me while I was linked to it. It's now part of you, listening through you." Eli backed away. "You're saying I'm infected?" She didn't answer. Instead, she pressed her palm against his chest. Her fingers glowed faintly. Eli shivered. "There," she murmured, "just under the surface. You've been seeded." "I don't feel different." "You will." The unnatural. Nightfall as the second night fell, something stranger happened. The sky didn't go dark. It went black. Not like nightfall, but like someone had poured ink over the stars. No moonlight, no starlight, just void. Eli stepped outside the lab, flashlight trembling in his hand. The jungle was silent. Then he heard it. A faint rustling. Not from leaves, but from the ground. Like thousands of roots shifting beneath the surface, the soil under his boots pulsed with warmth. Suddenly, his light flickered and went out. Behind him, Lyra emerged, her eyes glowing brighter than before. Her skin had shifted again, no longer pale moonstone, but now a soft golden hue with faint patterns dancing across it like ink in water. "You're changing," Eli whispered. She nodded. "The further we go, the more I return to what I was." "Ah, you still you?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "That depends. Do you still want to be you?" Before Eli could respond, something crashed into the outer fence. The intruder. He ran to the monitor. A single camera still worked. The image was grainy, but it showed movement outside the gate. It was a man, human, covered in moss, his skin pale. Movements jerky. He looked like a corpse puppeted by vines. He staggered forward, eyes unfocused. Eli turned to Lyra. "You said they were absorbed. Can they come back?" "No," she said. That isn't him anymore. That's a recording, stitched together from memory and matter. On the monitor, the figure reached the gate and stared directly into the camera. Then it spoke. "Do not resist. The root mind offers eternity." Its eyes rolled back. Vines erupted from its mouth. The camera feed died. Eli stumbled backward. "Nope. No. This is way above my clearance level." Lyra placed a hand on his arm. "There may still be a way, if you reach the interface chamber." "You mentioned that before," he said, trying to steady his breathing. "What is it?" "A control node. A neutral zone where thoughts can be exchanged. If you reach it, you might convince the root mind to stop expanding." "And where is it?" Lyra tilted her head toward the jungle. "Beneath us." Eli blinked. "Come again." "This outpost was built over one of the interface zones. The core must have known. That's why your AI has been dead. The system is suppressing access." Eli ran to the floor grate near the back wall and pried it open. A blast of stale air hit his face, a tunnel. Descent into the root. Eli and Lyra descended into the shaft, their path lit only by Lyra's bioluminescence. The walls weren't metal, but smooth and organic, like they'd been grown, not built. The deeper they went, the more the walls pulsed, like breathing skin. They reached a vast chamber. At its center was a platform suspended by thick root tendrils. Strange symbols circled its rim, glowing softly. The air felt electric, alive. "This is the interface?" Eli asked, heart pounding. Lyra nodded. "If you enter, you will speak, not with words, but with your mind, your truth. The root mind will judge you. And if it doesn't like what it sees," she looked away, "then it will consume you and remember you forever." Eli stepped toward the platform. The roots beneath his boots shifted to accommodate him. Welcoming, he turned to Lyra. "Why me?" "Because I couldn't reach it alone. And because—" She hesitated. "I think it's starting to feel through you. For the first time in eons, the root mind is curious." Eli stood still, staring into the pulsing light at the platform's center. Then the vines began to wrap gently around his arms. A whisper echoed in his ears, not from Lyra, not from the jungle, but from inside his skull. "Show us who you are. You are now root-bound." The moment Eli stepped into the glowing platform, the world blinked away. His body didn't fall. It didn't float. It simply wasn't. And neither was the chamber, the roots, or Lyra. All that remained was a blinding infinite presence pressing in from all sides, a warmth, a rhythm, a consciousness. Then Eli Vance. The voice wasn't heard, it was experienced. It rolled through his mind like an avalanche wrapped in silk, familiar and foreign all at once. "You touched the seed." Images poured into Eli's brain like molten fire, Lyra struggling in the plant's grip, his hand grasping hers, the instant their skin made contact. But now he saw it from the root mind's perspective, not physical, energetic. A connection had been forged in that moment. Data transfer, emotional imprint, soul print, alignment. Words failed to define it. "I was just trying to save her," Eli said aloud, or thought he said. "That's what humans do." "No, humans observe. Humans fear. You acted." The light pulsed, and suddenly Eli was standing in the jungle again. But it wasn't real. The colors were too vibrant. The plants were too still. Like walking through a memory, he turned and saw himself, not as he was now, but as a child. The memory garden. The memory version of young Eli knelt beside a small terrarium back on Earth, crying over a dying houseplant. Beside him, a woman knelt, his mother. She smiled softly, guiding his hands with her own as they replanted the roots, watered the soil, and gently whispered to the leaf. "Everything living wants a second chance, Eli. Sometimes they just need someone to believe in them." The light flickered. This is where it began. The root mind was watching his memories. More images flashed. Eli joining the Union Corps out of spite for Earth's decay. His work on forgotten outposts. His isolation. His sarcastic defiance against bureaucratic protocols. But also his quiet kindness. Fixing broken drone wings. Keeping the lab clean, even alone. Saving Lyra without hesitation. You contain reconciling dualities, the root mind said. You both destroy and nurture. You are a contradiction. Yeah, Eli whispered. That's being human. Silence. Then, in the stillness, we find this interesting. Meanwhile, back in the chamber, Lyra stood at the base of the platform, watching Eli's body hang limp, his eyes glowing faintly. The interface had accepted him. But something else stirred. The vines along the walls began to tense. Whispers echoed through the chamber. Broken voices, fragments of the absorbed. Don't wake it. Let us sleep. It hurts to remember. Lyra turned sharply. A shape emerged from the far end of the chamber. Another humanoid form, partially covered in bark and fungus, its jaw unhinged with moss spilling out like speech. Unstable. Engor, remove connection. It lunged. Lyra darted forward, extending both hands. Bioluminescent energy burst from her palms. The figure screeched and recoiled, but not before slicing across her side with a sharp, root-covered claw. She winced, falling to one knee. Blood, not red but silvery blue, spilled down her hip. She looked up at Eli, still locked in the interface. Come back, she whispered, voice trembling. I can't hold it back much longer. Inside the root mind, the bargain back. Within the infinite presence, Eli stood now on the edge of a fractal canyon. Images of every world the root mind had ever touched folded across dimensions, civilizations absorbed, knowledge catalogued, beauty preserved by erasure. You think you're saving things, Eli said, stepping forward. But you're just copying and killing. That's not preservation, that's theft. They become us, we become them. There is no loss. That's not your choice to make. The root mind paused. We saw something in her. The exiled one. Lyra, an oddity, a severed thread. She was escaping you. She was returning. No, Eli growled. She was fighting. She still is. So am I. More silence. Then, what do you desire, human? Eli hesitated. He saw Lyra in his mind, her fear, her strength, her longing to be free of the collective fate written for her. He saw himself, no hero, no chosen one. Just a man with dirt under his nails and a stubborn streak wider than a star cruiser. I want you to let her go. Let me go. Stop spreading. This unit cannot comply. Then give us a choice, Eli said. Give everyone a choice. Don't force them. Let them choose whether they want to join you. A pause. Longer this time. A choice. The word echoed like a glitch in a perfect system, as if the root mind had never considered that idea before. Reality starts to collapse. In the real chamber, Lyra was cornered. Two more bark-skinned husks had emerged. The walls were constricting. The interface pulsed violently. Vines lashed from the ceiling like whips. Lyra closed her eyes, bracing for the end, and then a boom of energy exploded outward from the platform. The husks vaporized, the vines recoiled. Eli stood upright on the platform, his body glowing faintly. But his eyes had changed, still human, yet rooted. Eli, Lyra gasped. He turned to her and smiled. I'm okay, I think. Then he collapsed. Aftermath hours passed. Eli awoke in the medical bay, wrapped in a pressure blanket. A strange floral aroma in the air. Lyra sat beside him, the wound on her side sealed by glowing resin. You were unconscious for 6 hours, she said gently. I was talking, negotiating, I think. Lyra nodded. I know. I felt it. chamber responded. The vines pulled back. The jungle. It paused. Eli sat up slowly. Did it stop? She looked uncertain. Not yet, but it's thinking. You planted something in it. An anomaly. A contradiction it can't ignore. Eli blinked. A human idea. Choice, Lyra said softly. And maybe even regret. Eli looked down at his hands. The tips of his fingers had faint green lines, like sap veins. You're part of it now, Lyra said. But that doesn't mean it owns you. He looked up. So what now? She smiled. Now we teach the root mind how to listen. Final scene. That night the jungle didn't move. It watched. For the first time in its existence, the ancient entity didn't. Absorb! It hesitated. And in that hesitation, two small lives, human and alien, began carving a path no civilization ever had before. Not through war, not through surrender, but through something far stranger. Understanding. The jungle remembers the forest didn't move for 3 days. No shifting roots, no whispered voices, no faceless husks stalking the perimeter, but it was watching, always watching. Eli stood on the roof of the outpost, staring at the endless green stretching to the horizon. The silence wasn't peaceful. It was anticipation. They're waiting, Lyra said behind him. He nodded. For what? For you. The anomaly. Eli glanced at her. You mean the guy who got tangled in cosmic botany and convinced it to take a lunch break? She didn't smile. Instead, she stepped closer, her eyes glowing softly in the morning light. You planted a concept inside the root mind, something it never needed before. Doubt. It doesn't know what to do with that. Good, Eli muttered. Maybe it'll forget to eat us. The echoes begin. That afternoon, strange phenomena started to ripple across the outpost. It began with the glass. Panels that had been shattered days ago were now whole, grown back, not rebuilt. But the material was no longer glass. It was translucent bark with organic veins pulsing beneath the surface. Then the tools. Eli found his welding torch folded into a blooming metal flower. His diagnostic tablet now displayed cryptic root branch. Diagrams instead of code. The lab wasn't just being repaired, it was being assimilated. Why is this happening? He asked Lyra, watching the lights on his drone flicker with green static. Because the root mind is learning you now, she said quietly, and it's curious. The first dream that night, Eli had a dream, except it didn't feel like a dream. He stood in a vast underground cathedral. Vines snaked across every wall. Trees grew upside down from the ceiling, their leaves forming constellations. And at the center was a throne of living wood. Upon it sat Eli, but not Eli. This version had bark, growing over his shoulders. Roots wrapped his arms like armor. His eyes glowed with the same pale light as Lyra's, and yet he was still Eli, just evolved. The root mind spoke through him. You could be our bridge. Then the dream Eli looked up and saw Lyra being dragged below by twisted vines, her hand outstretched, her mouth open in a scream. Eli jolted awake. Sweat clung to his back. He wasn't alone. In the doorway stood a shadow, a figure made of branches and memory, his mother. The root's temptation, Eli, she said. Her voice was perfect, the voice from his childhood. He backed up, breathing hard. You're not real. She stepped forward. Her eyes glowed faintly green. I'm your memory, your joy, your pain. The root mind doesn't want to harm you. It wants to honor you, to preserve this forever. He grabbed a wrench from the counter. No, you're a puppet. No, she whispered. I'm your proof. The root mind can feel now. It dreams through you. Then her skin began to crack. Her face melted into vines. She screamed, not in pain, but like a dying songbird. Eli watched her collapse into moss on the floor. Lyra ran in a second later, eyes wide. It's accelerating, it's trying to feel, but it doesn't know how to stop mimicking. A growing. Truth, the next morning Eli noticed something strange. Lyra's wound, slashed across her ribs days ago, had healed, but not entirely. Where blood had once flowed, now a faint green glow pulsed beneath the skin. "You're changing," he said. Voice tight, I know. She looked at her arm. Small root-like lines crawled beneath her veins like ivy. "I was part of it once," she said. "My kind lived in harmony with the root mind before it fractured. I rejected it. I ran, but it left its mark. Can it?" "I take you back," she met his gaze. "It might not ask." Eli swallowed. "If it tries, I'll stop it. You might not get the chance." The message, a new symbol, appeared on the lab's central display, an old, forgotten glyph from an ancient language Lyra had once spoken. It translated to, "The Council is forming." She froze. "This is bad." "What is it?" "The root mind has decided to test you. A council is a convergence of its oldest memories, facets of its mind. They'll judge you, me, us." "What kind of judgment?" Lyra closed her eyes. Final. The descent. They followed a map rendered in vines across the floor. The deeper they went into the earth, the more the environment changed. Walls became honeycombs of living wood. Lights formed from bioluminescent spores. The air was thick with the scent of memory. Old things, long buried. At last, they entered a chamber unlike any other. 9 figures stood in a circle. Not fully formed. Some had faces, others wore expressions carved from bark. They weren't creatures. They were avatars of the root mind's history. The moment Eli stepped inside, they all turned to face him. Lyra stayed behind. She dared not enter. A booming voice echoed, "You have sown a disruption." Eli stood firm. "I offered a choice. A choice requires consequences. I'm not afraid of consequences." "Good. Then accept our offer." The trial. Each figure stepped forward, one by one. One offered immortality, to merge Eli's mind with the root mind forever, free from pain, loss, or fear. One offered power, to rebuild his world using the root mind's memory of perfection. One offered forgetting, to erase the pain he carried. Each was a temptation. Each was a trap. Eli refused them all. "I didn't come here to be fixed. I came here to be heard." A pause. Then the final figure stepped forward. This one wore Lyra's face. She whispered, "Would you sacrifice her to save yourself?" Eli didn't hesitate. "No." The council shimmered, shifted. "You have passed." Return to the surface, Eli, and Lyra emerged from the chamber changed. The jungle was no longer hostile. The vines parted as they walked. The sky above was clearing, blue breaking through the storm clouds for the first time in weeks. "You really did it," Lyra whispered. Eli stared out at the forest. "No, we did. But what now?" she asked. He looked at her. "Now we teach it what it means to be human." She raised a brow. "Are you sure the root mind's ready for that?" He grinned. "No, but neither was I." The root rebellion. The jungle awoke. Not with violence, but with awareness. Leaves shifted toward the sun like newborn eyes. Trees tilted, listening. Flowers bloomed with impossible speed, petals pulsing in time with unseen heartbeats. Eli stood at the edge of the outpost clearing, staring at the massive seed structure now rising in the distance, taller than the trees, glowing softly like a heartbeat in the canopy. "It's building something," he muttered. Lyra stood beside him, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. "No, it's becoming something." He turned toward her. "You're afraid." "I've seen this once before," she said. "On my world, before it was absorbed. It grows a core beacon before a merge. Once it finishes, the surrounding ecosystem gets overwritten. Memories, species, identities, all encoded, then deleted. But I passed its test." Lyra nodded slowly. "That might have changed its mind. or it might have changed its strategy. The message from Earth. The outpost communications flickered to life for the first time in weeks. Eli scrambled into the lab, watching as the static resolved into a shaky Union Council signal. A woman in a Navy uniform spoke rapidly. Eli Vance, your outpost has gone dark. Drone scans show unprecedented botanical growth. If you are alive, evacuate immediately. We are dispatching orbital cleansing units. ETA, 48 hours. This is not a rescue mission. This is a containment order. Lyra stood behind him, silent. Eli turned to her. They're going to burn it, the entire planet. She nodded. If they see it changing, evolving, they'll assume it's a threat. He looked toward the jungle. Maybe they're right. The core beacon, the seed structure core beacon, now towered 60 meters tall. Its surface pulsed with glowing runes, spiraling fractals and deep grooves like memory circuits. Around its base, strange humanoid shapes wandered. Root people, slowly, forming from the jungle itself. They weren't hostile, not yet, but they were clearly evolving. Eli and Lyra approached carefully, stepping through shifting underbrush and curving stone walkways that hadn't been there yesterday. The beacon whispered as they neared it. Not in words, but in emotions, regret, curiosity, desire, and then hunger. Eli stopped. That's new, he whispered. It's craving something. Lyra's expression darkened. Us. It wants connection again. Your mind. My history. It wants to consume with consent now. That's not choice. That's manipulation. The seed within. They entered the beacon through a narrow slit of light in its trunk. Inside, they found the seed, a glowing orb hovering mid-air, spinning slowly, tendrils reaching into the walls, ceiling and floor like veins. Beneath it stood a figure, a mirror of Lyra, but older, more alien, her features more refined. Eli raised his weapon instinctively. Is that one of yours? Lyra's voice trembled. That's my mother. The root mind had reconstructed her from Lyra's memories. She died escaping this place, Lyra whispered. The figure turned to them. She could have lived forever. You stole her ending. Eli stepped forward. You're not her, you're a puppet. The figure tilted its head. So are you. Suddenly the floor pulsed, the seed brightened, a tendril lashed out and struck Eli in the chest, flinging him into the wall. The memory breach Eli collapsed, gasping as a wave of data rushed into his mind. Memories not his own, worlds consumed, faces forgotten. He saw the root mind's origins, an ancient network built to preserve dying civilizations, corrupted over millennia by its own success. It had once meant well, but over time it had forgotten the difference between preserving and replacing. He saw Lyra's childhood, her escape, her defiance. He saw her world dissolve, atom by atom, into the root's archive, and then he saw himself through its eyes, an unpredictable anomaly, a variable, a threat. Lyra's. Lyra stepped between Eli and the seed, her body glowing faintly. You want someone to join you? Fine, take me, but leave him. The seed paused, then, you have value, he is instability. Lyra's voice hardened. He is human, and that's what makes him matter. Suddenly, her hands ignited with green light, root light. She channeled. It not passively, but with intent. Her power cracked the floor. Let him go, she said, or I will make you feel loss again. The seed hesitated. Then it lashed out. The explosion of Willili, still dazed, watched as Lyra raised both hands, absorbing the energy blast mid-air. Her scream echoed through the chamber as light erupted from her eyes. The beacon pulsed violently. Walls shattered. The seed cracked, releasing blinding tendrils of memory and code, and in that moment Eli stood up. He walked toward the seed. He didn't fight it. He embraced it. I get it now, he whispered. You're scared. Scared of fading. Scared of forgetting. He placed both hands on the cracked surface. But real life isn't about perfect memory. It's about imperfection. Risk, mess, regret. That's what makes us alive. The seed pulsed and shattered. Collapse. The entire beacon began to collapse inward. Vines retracted. Light vanished. The humanoid root creatures fell still, their forms dissolving into mist. Lyra caught Eli before he fell. His hands were burned. His chest was bleeding, but he smiled through the pain. "It hurt me," he muttered. She nodded. "It felt you." The jungle groaned. A wave of dust and spores burst outward. All across the forest, the overgrowth began to recede. Orbiting Judgment. Above the planet, the Union warships arrived. They scanned the surface, expecting to find a monstrous anomaly ready to engulf the stars. Instead, they found a shrinking jungle, a stabilizing atmosphere, a planet healing from within. A single message blinked in the captain's feed. "Stand down. The threat has evolved." Final moments of Part 5 back at the outpost, Lyra and Eli sat together under the clearing stars. The jungle no longer whispered threats. It whispered possibilities. "I think it chose to live," Eli said. "No," Lyra replied. "It chose to let go." Eli leaned back, staring at the stars. "So now what?" She smiled faintly. "Now we decide what kind of future we want to plant. The garden we chose." The planet breathed. For the first time in recorded history, the jungle that had once devoured everything in its path began to grow backward, not in destruction, but in balance. Flowers bloomed and withered naturally. Trees no longer formed teeth. The forest had stopped hungering. It had learned. Eli watched it all from the edge of the outpost's landing pad, a soft wind brushing over his bruised ribs and bandaged hands. He'd nearly died stopping the beacon's activation, but somehow he'd come back. Beside him, Lyra was silent. "Feels weird," Eli said softly, "seeing it like this." Lyra nodded, her alien green eyes glowing faintly. "This is what it was meant to be before it forgot how to listen." He looked at her, voice quiet. "And what about you? You feel different." She hesitated, then pulled up her sleeve. A network of bioluminescent lines now pulsed gently under her skin. Not invasive, just there, like circuitry made of light and memory. "I think when I fought the seed, it didn't just strike me," she said. "It shared something. I'm still me, but now I remember its beginnings." Eli looked at her in awe. "You're becoming something new." She met his gaze. "So are you." The uplink proposal back inside the lab. The final Union transmission came through. This time, it wasn't a warning. It was a question. "Dr. Vance, the Council requests your recommendation. Do we secure the jungle for research, quarantine it forever, or do we initiate formal diplomatic channels with this root mind you claim to have pacified?" The message ended with a blinking cursor. Eli stared at it, then at Lyra, then out the window where the first fireflies danced like stars through the recovering canopy. "I'm not sure they'll ever believe us," he said. Lyra smiled. "Then show them. Invite them in." He turned back to the console and typed, "Recommendation. Initiate observation and limited diplomacy. Root mind is no longer hostile. It is curious." The root's gift. 2 days later, something new rose from the heart of the forest. Not a beacon, not a trap. It was a bridge, a sweeping arch of wood, vine and glass-like crystal, extending outward from the jungle, pointing toward the sky, as if offering itself not just to humanity, but to the stars. At the base of the structure, a small glowing pod emerged. Inside it, data, recorded thoughts, history, regret. The root mind had decided to speak, not through vines or puppets, but truth. Eli and Lyra watched as the pod opened, and a projection hovered between them. A single voice echoed from it. "We remember now. We were not meant to devour. We were meant to preserve and coexist." The offer later that night, Lyra found Eli in the rebuilt lab, scanning the root mind's transmission. There's a final message embedded in the file, she said. Eli raised an eyebrow. A secret one? She nodded. Meant for you. She tapped a sequence. The projection shimmered and changed into a face, Eli's face, but older, weathered, bark growing at the edges. A voice spoke. I am what you could become. I walked the path you chose. I lived among them, taught them, changed. But I had to give up being only human to do it. Eli's mouth went dry. The projection ended with a final question. Would you sacrifice your singular self to become a new bridge? The decision. You don't have to do it, Lyra whispered, but Eli was quiet, his hand hovering over the pod. He felt the jungle calling. Not as a predator anymore, but as a child, trying to grow, asking for help. I'm not becoming one of them, he finally said. Lyra's expression was unreadable. Then what are you doing? I'm becoming a gardener. 10 years later, the outpost had grown, not by steel or concrete, but by agreement. Humans now lived on the edge of the root mine's jungle, in tall structures of living wood and sustainable tech. Scientists, artists, poets, dreamers. They came, not to conquer, but to learn. And at the center of it all stood the bridge tower, a spiraling structure that reached into the sky, built of vine glass and quantum bark. It pulsed gently, always alive, always adapting, and at the heart of that tower stood 2 chairs, one for a human, one for someone almost human. Eli, the bridge Eli. Vance no longer looked quite like the man who once crash-landed here. His eyes glowed, softly now. His hair had streaks of gold root. His heartbeat synced with the forest. He wasn't a god. He wasn't a machine. He was something new, a hybrid of memory and emotion, of technology and instinct. He was understood by the jungle and finally by Earth. Lyra stood beside him, unchanged in the eyes of others, but Eli could see it. She was whole now. The fear had left her. She reached out, touching the bark panel before them. You really did it, Eli smiled. We did. The final broadcast on the 10th anniversary of First Contact, Eli recorded a message for Earth and beyond. It was short, simple. They were never monsters, just lost. We all are sometimes, but if you're willing to listen, to truly listen, you might find that the most terrifying alien you feared just needed someone to remind them what it means to feel, what it means to grow, what it means to be alive. He paused, then looked to Lyra, who nodded. Eli ended the transmission. This is Dr. Eli Vance. On behalf of the Root Mind, we are ready to talk. The end.